the first question about the situation on the border, which started from summer and the escalation. And how do you think this escalation is used by Serbs or pro-Russian people in Serbs to distract from situation with war in Ukraine? Is it some kinds of chain, but not separate conflicts? How do you think?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It started before war in Ukraine, in last war in Ukraine.
Yes, but now it has continued.
Yes, in September 2021, we had the problems with car plates with Serbia. And Alexander Bochan-Harchenko, the Russian ambassador in Belgrade, came together with Mr. Stefanovic from Serbia, minister in the government of Serbia, in Jarinje, in the border crossing between Kosovo and Serbia, to inspect the amassing of troops, Serbian troops nearby the border with Kosovo, and in the air was MiG-29. Serbia has 14 MiG-29s, 8 are donation from Belarus, and 6 are from Russian Federation. So it started with a Russian ambassador coming to our border regarding the most recent times. And in general, despotic President Putin, he mentions every week Kosovo. If he forgets to mention, then it's Sergei Lavrov, Dmitry Medvedev, or Maria Zakharova. So one of them every week mentions to Kosovo, in the sense that they want to say that Kosovo should be reoccupied by Serbia. We were occupied by Serbia from 1912 to 1999. We were occupied 87 years. Soon it will be 15 years that we declare independence. And they want reoccupation. So,
but why they need to start it when there are processes in Ukraine? The big war in Ukraine starts and they touch you and take attention of the world.
yes.
Possible. Why?
Because they want to say that, number one, if NATO could intervene against Milosevic's Yugoslavia to liberate Kosovo, he can intervene against Ukraine for Donbass and Crimea. But these are so different situations.
Yes.
Because in 1999, 19 democratic countries got together in NATO and decided to bomb Serbia, Yugoslavia at that time. So basically, 19 countries were convinced that the European country has to be bombed. It must have been very bad. And it was very bad because massacres were taking place in Kosovo and so many atrocities. So NATO intervened to stop the genocide. Whereas in case of Russian Federation, it's not 19 countries, it's not even 19 people, it's one person.
Yes, you know his name.
Yes, and despotic President Putin turned for a policy of Russian Federation into children's bicycle. From one day to another, everything depends from one person. So this is very different. There was no crimes, let alone genocide, of Ukraine happening in Donbass and Crimea. Actually, what is happening now with Russian intervention are crimes against humanity, are war crimes, and there are more and more indications of genocide as well against Ukraine. So it is exactly the opposite of what Kremlin is claiming. And another reason why they mention Kosovo is because they are nervous and angry at success of Kosovo. They want Kosovo to be a failure of Western intervention, like in Afghanistan and Iraq. But Kosovo is a success story. Serbian genocide was stopped, and we are building a democratic state with economic progress. We are showing that NATO intervention was worth of having, but at the same time we are showing that democracy and economy go together. There are quite some powers and superpowers in the world who want to show that you don't need democracy for development. You can do without democracy. And we are a relatively small country, but a great example that quality democracy and economic development go hand in hand. And this makes Kremlin angry.
But you asked NATO recently about to make more powerful on the border, but they refuse this, reject. Why? Why they don't give you weapon? Like Ukraine don't need more weapon, but we don't got enough.
Yeah. Well, I said to NATO that I would welcome, and it is in our interest to have stronger NATO presence. The reason why we think so is because Serbia and Russia are getting stronger in their relations. In 2021, they have been planning 91 actions together. 91 joint military activities. But they made 104, more than they have planned. The two most notable being Slavic Shield and Slavic Brotherhood. We participated in 2021 in Defender Europe 21, a NATO enterprise, military activity, with 330 soldiers among 16 hosting countries. But recently, Serbia and Russia has made 3 agreements which make them more dangerous to ourselves. First, in May last year, Serbia made an agreement with Russia to get cheap gas.
Oh.
Second, in September last year, Foreign Minister of Serbia at that time, Nikola Selakovic, and Foreign Minister of Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, at United Nations General Assembly meeting, at the margins of it, made an agreement to coordinate foreign policy of Serbia and Russian Federation. And in November last year, the most pro-Russian Serbian politician, Alexander Vučić, who used to be vice president and spokesperson of the political party of the wife of Slobodan Milošević, Mira Marković, has been appointed the head of intelligence and secret service of Serbia. So basically, Serbia and Russia are very close. Serbia becoming like gubernia of Russia. So this is the reason, number one, that I'm saying it's better 3,800 troops that we have of NATO in Kosovo to increase. When NATO arrived in Kosovo, it had 55,000. I'm not saying we should have 55,000, but also 3,800 feels a bit small. And I read Serbian media, quite often their generals, they say, oh, it's only 3,800. They want to encourage their own soldiers and officers that Kosovo is weakly protected by NATO. So it is doable to go back again. And President of Serbia asked for 1,000 soldiers to come back to Kosovo. NATO said no to them, which is good for Kosovo, but also good for those 1,000 soldiers, because those 1,000 soldiers would not be welcomed here. So I think it's good for us and good for them. We are strengthening our army. I have increased the budget in 2022 by 52%. And this year, another 20%. We are at 1.5% of GDP expenditure for defense. We are very proud for this, and we look forward to participate in Defender Europe 23 with 1,365 soldiers, 4 times more than last time. And we are going to be a hosting country as well. However, it would be good to increase the number of soldiers, and some countries are going to increase. Madam Prime Minister Sanna Marin of Finland, the Republic of Finland, said that they will bring a bit more soldiers from Finland to Republic of Kosovo. So,
but do you think that now that is will be compare the forces, or and what will can I thanks God we do not start it, but would be fuse to start real war? Is it possible?
no, I think the country which is bigger always starts the war.
From his point,
I know, but there is a small nation, they never start wars.
Yes.
Ukraine, Kosovo, we don't start wars. Serbia and Russia start wars.
Yes.
Bigger countries start wars, not smaller countries.
Yes, I mean Serbia will start.
Serbia could start, but if we have more NATO soldiers on the ground, they could think twice.
Oh.
And when you think twice, very often you do not act. So historically, Serbia has been first attacking us and then thinking. We want to make them think before attack. So perhaps if they think well, they will not attack. So the increase of NATO soldiers in Kosovo is to make Serbia think twice before attacking. And they have at present 48 forward operation bases around the border in the so-called ground safety zone, 5 kilometers, which is having 50 to 150 soldiers in each of these forward operation zones, operation bases, 28 military, 20 gendarmerie.
Mm-hmm.
Serbia allocates 3% of its GDP for the army. Is the strongest army in the region, a client regime of Kremlin who wants to violate our territorial integrity and call destabilization of the region. They used to name it Greater Serbia in previous century. Greater Serbia changed its name, not its aim, into Serbian world, to a kind of mimicry to Ruski Mir, Serbian world, they call it here. We are not afraid, but we are vigilant and worried. We are worried, but not afraid.
Okay, but Serbs every time use Russian narratives in their propaganda. I think so. Would you compare if you follow these Ukrainian pro-Russian narratives in Ukraine and in Serbia? And sometimes they used this narrative like that is Muslim and Christian conflict again. And really, I was shocked because in Ukraine, we continue, many people, unfortunately, they continue to follow this narrative about Muslim and Christian conflict. But now, when I inside, I completely understand that this is not true. There is no religion-based conflict. So, about comparing propaganda in Russia, Russian and Serb propaganda in Ukraine and in Kosovo.
During the war in Kosovo, Albanians were killed indiscriminately of their religion. Because we have Albanians who are Muslims, majority, but we also have Catholics, Albanian Catholics. And we have Albanian atheists or agnostics. They didn't care. If you're Albanian, for them, you should be exterminated. So you have so many massacres in Kosovo when Albanians, be they Muslim or Catholic, were killed, and very often killed together. The biggest massacre that took place in Kosovo was on the 27th of April 1999 in the village Meja of Jakova, where 347 Albanians were killed together, and majority of them Catholics. So they built these false narratives in order to divide the world, to get some short-sighted, naive friends. But that has nothing to do with the truth. In his speech in Valdai Club at Sochi in October 2021, Putin, while discussing with others, they recall that in 2021 they have been celebrating 800 years of Alexander Nevsky and 300 years of Peter the Great. So they take these historical events, turn them into myths, and link them with a dictator, showing that under the weight of history, democracy doesn't mean much and is rather trivial and symbolic. The act of voting on Sunday morning. What is the act of voting on Sunday morning comparing to centuries of history with which this dictator is creating a shortcut connection? This is how Milosevic did in Kosovo. He was relying on the Battle of Kosova, 1389, against Ottoman Empire, and he created a link of himself with that event, and then attacked Slovenia, attacked Croatia, attacked Bosnia and Herzegovina, and attacked Kosovo. Similar to what despotic President Putin is doing. First, taking Alexander Nevsky and Peter the Great, and then attacking Ukraine. So this is what the fight against democracy looks like.
Using historic and
Yes.
this myth,
Yes.
myth and
So a partisan interpretation of history turned into a myth in a direct connection with a dictator against peace-loving, democratic nations of Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, and Kosovo. In our case, Ukraine in your case.
And do you think that Putin ends up like Milosevic?
Well, Milosevic died in prison in Hague. I think that for the crimes in Ukraine, there should be a tribunal, international tribunal, and Ukrainian tribunal. Whether and who will all end there is difficult to know. But I think that the Russian war in Ukraine wouldn't have happened if Russian Federation would have been a democratic country. Almost 230 years ago, German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who lived in Königsberg, now Kaliningrad, ironically, all his life,
Yes.
he wrote this text on perpetual peace, basically affirming that democracies do not go to war with each other. And Ukraine is at war because Russia is not democratic. Kosovo was at war because Serbia was not democratic. So we should not allow them to tell us who wants to join NATO and not. That Russia doesn't like any NATO members at its borders. No. At our borders, we don't want dictatorships. We should problematize their lack of democracy and not let them problematize our willingness to join NATO.
But you should, as I understand, you try to solve problems with some Serbs' attention very slightly. You make some terms like positive discrimination, to take Serbs some places in parliament for like ads places and other else, but that doesn't work. And how continue to do that, or you need to change the technique with cooperating with Serbs?
Uh,
They every time need more and more.
yes. In Kosovo, we are 93% Albanians. Serbs are 4%, other minorities are 3%. And we declared Kosovo a multi-ethnic country, even though Albanians are 93%. After we've done this, now they want one ethnic association of their municipality. It has nothing to do with Serbs. It has everything to do with Belgrade.
Oh.
So Belgrade is not satisfied. And Belgrade, by definition, cannot be satisfied as long as their policy is Serbian war. So they provoke, they are aggressive, but we are firm, clear, and patient. I am for dialogue, principle, equal dialogue, for normalization of relations, because relations between Kosovo and Serbia are not normal. But relations are not normal because Serbia is not normal. I'm not going to abnormalize my country to make normal relations with abnormal Serbia.
Okay.
So
you wanted to be a humans, democracy, humanity.
Yes. So I want us as normal country to have normal relations with them. They want to have normal relations with us by abnormalizing us and turn us abnormal just as they are abnormal. No, I will stay normal and I want to normalize relations.
Okay, not provocative. Yes, but sorry for this question. Maybe it's provocative.
Please.
But you have dual citizenship, and you have Albanian citizenship. In Ukraine, that is dual citizenship is very condoned by people, ordinary people, because our politicians need to have one citizenship. Ukrainian, many of them not have, but that our people, Ukrainians, condone them. And what about Kosovars? Why do you need to have another citizenship, and how does it work?
Well, it's not that I need, but former president of Albania, Nishani, for contribution for Albanians in general, gave me this passport. And there are many Albanians who have two passports. Some of them have Montenegro and Albania, Montenegro and Kosovo, Kosovo and Albania. But we always have one which is private. And we integrate as minorities wherever we are. So Albanians in Montenegro are integrated. Albanians in Serbia are not very integrated because Serbia doesn't like them. So they would like to integrate, but it's not possible. They don't let you. And Kosovo and Albania are two different states, but we are one nation because we have one language. So Serbia always wanted to say that Albanians of Kosovo are different from Albanians from Albania, wanted to have a rift, so they swallowed us easier.
Oh.
So Albania helped us very much to liberate. So in this sense, let me give you one analogy in the Balkans. Serbia is like a small Russia. Republika Srpska is like Belarus. They want to turn Montenegro into Ukraine.
Oh.
Albania is like Romania.
Uh-huh.
Kosovo is like Moldova.
Uh-huh.
And they want our north to become like Transnistria.
Oh.
You understand?
Yeah.
So Moldova.
Transnistria is very bad.
So
here once, and that is very poor country.
This is what Serbia wants. Serbia wants north of Kosovo to be like Transnistria. Serbia wants to become small Russia. Republika Srpska small Belarus, and Montenegro small Ukraine. This is to create a kind of
that's their way of thinking. But do you think is it possible to make some official union between Albania and Kosovo and other Greece probably?
We cooperate well with each other, and I have won on this ticket of jobs and justice. This is what I said. I want to strengthen Kosovo, to defend its territorial integrity and sovereignty, and this is my priority.
So you don't need some unions like now Ukraine have a union with Poland, with Lithuania and Baltic countries.
Yes, you know, we don't know what the future brings. But now we need normalization of relations with mutual recognition. Serbia does not recognize Kosovo, but I don't recognize them either. So we are not recognizing them, they are not recognizing us. Let's have mutual recognition. This is the most important.
And
in the future, we want to join EU, we want to join NATO, but I don't know what the future will bring because times are very difficult. Things change quite fast. But I think that EU should be defended. It's very good that Ukraine got candidate status. And we want to have that as well. Last year, in May, I have applied for Council of Europe membership. And in December, we have applied for EU membership. I believe that Moldova, Ukraine, the Western Balkans, we should all join EU.
Mhm.
And then
how long it will
you
be?
cannot.
It will continue because applying and to become the member is different.
Yes. Finland and Sweden was 3 years.
Yeah.
Malta and Cyprus 14.
And Turkey 10 years or more.
I think that average is 9,
Yeah.
and we want to go for the average.
Yeah.
But we don't know. It is not known now. However, even when EU does not deliver, I have no alternative. I like EU very much. I think European Union, with all its defects and shortcomings, is the most important political project and historical process of peace and prosperity in this planet since Second World. So we should defend it. Some countries or nations who think that if EU gets weaker or falls apart, they can get stronger, they are very naive. Out of weakening or, God forbid, ruining European Union, only one country will benefit, Russian Federation. No one else will benefit. But I understand inside EU we are not the same. With some of the countries, we can understand each other much better than with some other countries. That's how reality is. And in this sense, I can imagine that, for example, for a long period of time, Ukraine can have better relations with Baltic countries and with Poland than with some other countries who have not shown much understanding for Ukraine and didn't help as much as they could and as much as they should.
Yeah. And you said that last time we met about that previously Kosovars think that all issues can be solved by money, but it's not true.
No.
What do you mean?
These 20 years of 21st century in international relations were very much years of international terrorism and finances. We had 9/11, Al-Qaeda, then ISIS, Daesh, then war in Syria, then Breivik in Norway, right-wing extremism, religious fundamentalism. It was very much like this, and financial crisis, 2008, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, and so on, the meltdown, the financial. So these 20 years to me seem very much years of terrorism and finances. Now, after Russian aggression in Ukraine, it seems to me as if the new epoch has started. And this is the epoch of the return of geopolitics and history. History is very important now. I dare say history is more important than finance. it's not about who is richer or poorer, who has more money or less. It's the interpretation of history. How do we look at our past that has become very important for our future? When despotic President Putin says there is no such thing as Ukrainian identity because it never existed in the past, and Stalin was wrong, Stalin was right, and Lenin was wrong. When you start with this kind of thinking, now we all have to engage in the struggle about history. Struggle about history and struggle about future are the same story.
Yes, we completely distorted our history. That
Yes,
is
yes.
Something like hell.
They want to cut your roots,
Yeah.
your national collective consciousness, your traditions, language, and customs. So they want to attack your history in order you not to have future. So now history is very prominent in politics together with geopolitics.
Yeah, completely. That's exactly. And but economy is very important too issue, and as for me, that's the same similarities with Ukraine and Kosovo. That's GDP of our countries. That many immigrants, Ukrainians, take or give money to the GDP of Ukraine. Now, Kosovar people, many of them is like immigrants. They are working in other countries, but send money to Kosovo. But how to solve this? How to deal with it? How to back people in Kosovo?
Our economy has been growing in 2022 by 4% of GDP after we subtract inflation. We have increased our tax revenues by 22%, exports by 23%, and foreign direct investment by 44%. In Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, we have moved up by 17 places upwards, and another 17 places by coincidence, according to Reporters Without Borders on World Press Freedom Index. And then we have also improved rule of law with World Justice Project. We are number 1 in Western Balkans and number 2 in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Only Georgia is ahead of us. Number 1 in the Balkans for the second year and number 2 in the world regarding improvement in rule of law. So we are progressing. What we need is we need investors. We need more investment in our economy. Exports are increasing in food and beverage, textile, leather, wood and metal processing, and especially ICT sector, information communication technology. So let's see now how it moves on and continues. But we would need more investors to come and invest in our country so we could employ more people. This is something that we need. On the other hand, we need support in international arena. Becoming members of Council of Europe, Partnership for Peace with NATO. Can you imagine? Russian Federation and Serbia has Partnership for Peace with NATO and not us. It's like, it's
impossible.
From 1996, Russia had Partnership for Peace with NATO. And we do not have it yet.
They want to be kicked off from all involved organizations. Russia will be kicked off.
Yeah. And on the other hand, we need to get into UNESCO and Interpol, but we have to think when to apply, when it is the best time.
Yes, because we will have some problems with Interpol because Russian take some person in Interpol and international, and you know that some Ukrainians were catched by Interpol before because Russians pointed out on this person like terrorist or something else. Unpredictable. And what is your advice for our country for recovery? Because you went through that, and now in Ukraine we're concerned about the corruption in these processes with international money for recovery, country rebuilding, and others. What is your advice?
Well, it is important to grow industry, not only retail, trade, and finances, but industry and agriculture. Focus on industrial production and agriculture. Then focus on the link between education and economy. Whenever we start talking about education, we end up talking about economy. Whenever we start to talk about economy, we end up talking about education. And I must say that the only thing which is more important than education and economy is the link between the two, the bridge. The bridge between economy and education. Labor market, professional education. Focus on this so people stay in the country. Unfortunately, after the end of the war in Kosovo, many of the international community who came here, UNMIC, United Nations, well, you are not just unemployed, you are unemployable because you don't have a diploma. And all of a sudden, majority didn't have diplomas. So many people, a considerate portion of the population, got 2 or 3 diplomas. Waving diplomas in the air for foreign investments to come, but the planes did not stop in our country. People left and we got brain drain.
Yes.
So many were studying international relations and political science, law and economy, but no jobs. It is very important to have economy and education hand in hand. Not first education and then economy. Because if you do like that, the best will leave. So in the life of individual, like yours or mine, we do first education and then a job. But in the life of society, it's not one after the other. It should be at the same time.
Yeah.
So education and employment are in diachronic relation in the case of individual, but in a synchronic relation in the life of society.
Yeah, but how crack down this corruption?
For corruption, you need radical transparency. And here digitalization can help. We are doing digital transformation and e-Kosovo, electronic Kosovo, by getting the model of Estonia, Estonian e-government academy. And recently in Davos, when I was in this World Economic Forum, I met also with the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, who is in charge for digitalization. I think it's Mr. Fedorov.
Yeah.
And I had with me my Chief Technology Officer, and they got in touch with Mr. Fedorov's team to see what we can learn from DIA. So I think
before the war
yes,
in Ukraine.
2019. So it is very important to use digitalization for improvement in the quality of services, on accountability of the officials, and on the transparency of the processes. This can help a great deal to fight corruption. The other thing which helps in fighting corruption is on making sure in cultural, social, value-based governance that politicians will remain middle class. If you want to get rich, try your luck in business. Politics and government is not a place where you get richer. Actually, it's good to get a bit poorer from politics. Remain middle class. I'm not asking that politicians should be poor, but they should not get rich. It's legitimate to try and get richer, but not in public sector, not in local or national government. There you're supposed to serve. The word minister comes from the Latin word which means servant.
Oh.
Prime Minister is
And
chief servant.
we have the party of servers, you know, that Sluga Народа in the translation is servant of citizens.
So
Okay.
I think fighting corruption is very important to those who are at the top to understand best that in governance you need a cabinet of well-educated ministers and deputy ministers and civil servants who want to remain middle class.
The second, the last two questions. Your career starts when you was a student in the underground of students who go against the Yugoslavia and others. So now, how do you teach young people to be patriotic? How do you do these processes?
I think it is very important to learn well history and to have a sense of belonging to your nation and country without hating anyone else, but to understand that one should be proud from the production and building that you do at home. And I think that education system can do a great help here. I believe we need new methods of pedagogy in learning history for young generations. Because, you know, it's very easy for young generations to say that history is boring. And I must admit, sometimes it is. But we have to learn history because fake news on current affairs can do a lot of harm. But there is incredible amount of harm in fake history. And dictators, they love fake history. So in order to defend democracy, we need to fight not only fake news, but also fake history.
But do you think that military preparing in military way is not important in this case, in patriotics? It's important because I was astonished because after the war in Kosovo, the parties which leaders were war heroes, they don't got enough voters to become the main party. We will have the same situation in Ukraine, that our heroes in Ukraine they will not involve in politics after the war.
There are so many factors. It's difficult to say that you can explain things with it's a lot of difficulties. Circumstances that should be taken into consideration to explain. I was prisoner of war. I was in war at that time when the freedom fighters created a political party and they failed in the elections. And it took many years to win again. But I think that in 1999, they didn't show sufficient self-restraint. There was quite an amount of arrogance among some, not all, of the commanders. And that was not nice, and people didn't like it. So a kind of humility, a kind of humbleness was needed. And in several occasions on prominent politicians was not there.
When you were a political prisoner, you were disappeared sometimes, and now many political prisoners sent. So hostages, Russian hostages in Ukraine, how you can support them? What do you think that time when you were in prison, and how you try to be not lost the hope?
I never lose hope, but I'm always prepared for very difficult situations, which in addition prepare me for the situations which are even more difficult. So I believe in struggle. I think that human beings are beings of desire and struggle. desire and struggle are full of life. So I don't mind struggle at all. And I think that all those who are political prisoners or war hostages who manage to survive, very likely will come out stronger and your society will benefit from that.
Okay, and the last question, there was a slogan in Kosovo, no negotiation, self-determination.
Yeah.
And is it relevant for now for Ukraine, no negotiation with Russia?
I think so too. Because in 2005, when we emerged as political movement, they wanted to say that Kosovo is a problem in whose solution we should make Serbia part. We said, no, we're not the problem. Serbia is our problem. We have a problem. We are not the problem. Ukraine is not a problem. Ukraine has a problem. And this problem is Russia.
Not became victim a problem, yes?
And number two is they wanted to say the status of Kosovo is unresolved. We have to resolve the status. And in this solution, we should make Serbia part. We said, no, wait a minute. We do not lack a status. Every territory in the world has a status. Maybe that status somebody doesn't like, but there is a status. We don't like a status. People like freedom to decide about themselves. And the political name of this freedom is self-determination. So we basically said that what we lack is freedom as people, not status as territory. The status of territory should be the outcome of the freedom of the people. By some journalists I have been challenged. They told me, but there was referendum in Crimea and in Donbass.
And it was
Yes.
no law according to the law, this
Yeah,
referendum.
No,
This was like a
Yes.
piece of shit story.
Yes, they told me that, what do you think about this referendum? And I said, well, I've seen ballot boxes being carried out by Russian soldiers. It's not about the people, it's about the military. But self-determination is democratic in character. It comes from below to up, and not from top to down. From top to down comes dictatorship. Ballot boxes of Russians, soldiers, coming in front of the citizens in Donbass and Crimea. Self-determination comes from below, not from above. So that is not self-determination. This is what I've answered to journalists who wanted, some of them, to challenge me by saying they have been doing it in Donbass and Crimea.
Thank you very much for your support of Ukraine. And
Thank
we
you.
believe that we actually recognized Kosovo in Ukraine. We walk into these processes, our deputy MPs, and so that will be probably this week,
Yes.
this year. Thank you very much.